Injuries could define an intriguing Thursday night divisional duel. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points morning lineup for Thursday, September 28th, 2023. Now, as you guys know, any stats you hear in this program will be from the Fantasy Points data suite unless otherwise noted. The data suite is 75% off for the 2023 NFL season over at fantasypoints.com, and you can check it out with a free 7-day trial. You can also subscribe to any fantasy content package with code GURIFIC25 for a major discount. Now, let's start with a Thursday night injury update. At the skill positions, both the Lions and Packers are listing key contributors as questionable. The Lions with running back David Montgomery with a thigh injury, and the Packers with Aaron Jones, their running back, with a hamstring injury, and Christian Watson, their wide receiver, also with a hamstring injury. Meanwhile, both offensive lines are decimated. The Lions starting right side, guard Halapoulivaati Vaitai and right tackle Matt Nelson are both out, while Nelson's replacement, Taylor Decker, and left guard Jonah Jackson are questionable. Now, the Packers have already ruled out the entire left side of their line, David Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins. Where have we heard that before, Packers fans? Now, this will be a fascinating matchup on Thursday night. First of all, the Lions were excellent defensively in Week 3, giving up just 0.11 adjusted yards before contact per rush attempt to an exceptional Falcons run game that was averaging 1.85 average yards before contact per attempt headed into the clash. But the Packers' low rush grade at fantasypoints.com, our second worst of the week, could also have to do with the differences in style between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. In a small sample this year, Jones is averaging basically 4 times more yards before contact per attempt than Dillon, and there was a pretty significant gap in 2022 as well. Basically, 0.7 yards per attempt higher for Jones. Dillon has very clearly been a cold weather back throughout his career. Right now, he has gotten absolutely nothing done with Jones out of the lineup, so I am not really happy to play Dillon, even if Jones misses this game. The Packers' pass protection, even with some injuries, has held up exceptionally well this year, but against 3 of the worst pass rushes in the NFL so far. If Jones plays, I consider him an RB2, as I do with Montgomery. And Montgomery being back, which Coach Dan Campbell has said he is optimistic about, could push Jahmyr Gibbs back to a target-heavy role, which is what we want, by the way. I'm glad that he got 18 opportunities this past week, but I want more than 2 targets for Jahmyr Gibbs. He's too valuable as a receiver. And if Christian Watson plays, I'm starting him as an upside wide receiver 3. I've liked what I've seen from Jordan Love so far, and can't wait to see him with his best receiver. Likely starting at quarterback for the Saints this weekend, it's Jameis Winston, and it'll be a revenge game against the Buccaneers.
I said, are you strong? They said, I'm strong if you strong. And I said, we strong then.
As I said on Monday, Carr's injury was not as serious as first feared when suffered on Sunday, per NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. He could miss some time and probably will miss at least this game. It is an important caveat that the Saints didn't game plan for having Jameis in the lineup, but I found it very interesting that Jameis's 2.01 second average time to throw was the second lowest among any quarterback with 10 or more dropbacks in any game this season. Only Tua Tagovailoa against the Packers in Week 2 had a lower average time to throw. That's not the big play Jameis we remember, who takes time to let plays develop down the field. And despite those quick throws, Jameis completed just 62.5% of his passes at a minus 9.2% completion percentage over expectation. So it's completion percentage over expectation, but it's minus. So really it was completion percentage under expectation. Kind of confusing, but not good.
What the hell are you talking about?
Again, let's see what happens when the Saints have a week to prepare with Jameis as the starter. But the matchup suggests he should have some time to potentially make plays down the field against his former club. Jameis is a low-end, maybe even appealing DFS play, and I'm not downgrading his receivers much at all. I do still consider him one of the best backup quarterbacks in football. Also at quarterback, Patrick Mahomes of the Chiefs with an ankle injury, Joe Burrow of the Bengals with a calf injury, and Bryce Young of the Panthers with an ankle injury all got in full practice and all are trending towards starting this weekend. Jimmy Garoppolo of the Raiders and Anthony Richardson of the Colts are progressing through concussion protocol. Richardson is obviously further along as, well, he missed last week's game, so he suffered his injury 2 weeks ago. And curiously, this is something to monitor. The Browns quarterback, Deshaun Watson, rested on Wednesday with right shoulder soreness. He just had his best game as a Cleveland Brown, but maybe not the best news on planet Earth that he's dealing with shoulder soreness this early in the season. It is something to monitor for the Cleveland Browns. At running back, Jonathan Taylor can come off the PUP list next week, but it still looks like he no longer wants to be a Colt. Per ESPN's Dan Graziano, when asked if Taylor will be dealt before the NFL trade deadline, quote, "From what I understand," this being Graziano writing, "he still doesn't want to play for the Colts and they still don't want to give him a long-term contract. The time since the preseason has mellowed out the market a bit and maybe created more fertile ground for a deal. Taylor has to miss at least one more week while on the physically unable to perform list, but it wouldn't surprise me if his first game of the season was in a different uniform. The Browns might end up being more motivated to make a deal than they want us to believe after the Nick Chubb injury." That seems more like informed speculation than an official report, but as Graziano noted, the Browns have had a serious injury in the backfield, and so have the Ravens, where they haven't been able to keep a steady run game in years because of injuries. Remember that the Dolphins had interest in the preseason as well, though that would be absolutely devastating to fantasy managers after, Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane, that's how you pronounce it, per Devin himself, put up nearly 100 fantasy points this past weekend against the Broncos. Meanwhile, for the Colts, Zach Moss has a pair of 20-plus fantasy point performances to start his 2023 season under new coach Shane Steichen. Moss's long-term role is up in the air because of the uncertainty surrounding JT's situation, but they're clearly committed to feeding Moss for at least the time being. There's still a chance Taylor doesn't suit up for the Colts in 2023 or maybe ever again, and Moss's role is big enough to stick as an RB1 for as long as JT remains out of Indy's lineup. Do you think Jonathan Taylor plays this year? Where do you think Jonathan Taylor plays this year? And will it be good or bad for fantasy? Comment below with your projected landing spot and how you think it's going to go from a fantasy football perspective. Now, in good news, Chargers running back Austin Eckler returned to practice on Wednesday in a limited fashion. Eckler missed his second consecutive game with what certainly appeared to be a high ankle sprain, and the Chargers were able to win against the Vikings despite getting absolutely no production out of Joshua Kelly for the second consecutive week. Kelly has 51 yards on 24 carries and just 5 receiving yards on 2 targets over the last 2 games. The Chargers need Eckler back to have a balanced offense, and with the loss of Mike Williams, the run game will be much more important. Eckler hadn't practiced at all since the injury until Wednesday, so this represents progress. Monitor him very closely the rest of the week, but there could be some added urgency now. And here are a few situations to monitor at wide receiver. The 49ers have 2 injuries to their 2 top guys, Deebo Samuel with ribs and a knee, and Brandon Ayuk with the shoulder that cost him last week's game. Now, we knew about Deebo's ribs. He played through them against the Giants on Thursday night per Coach Kyle Shanahan, but the knee issue is new, and Deebo didn't practice with it on Wednesday. It's very possible the Niners are limiting his reps given his injury past. Now, Ayuk was limited after missing last Thursday's game, so he's trending in the right direction. The Dolphins' Jalen Waddle, who wasn't part of their 70-point outburst against the Broncos, was full participant in practice on Wednesday as he progresses through the concussion protocol, so he's trending in the right direction. The Ravens are decimated yet again, as Odell Beckham Jr. with an ankle and Rashad Bateman with a hamstring did not practice on Wednesday. Both of them are droppable in virtually all but the deepest of formats. And, in big news, the Rams hope Cooper Kupp will come off IR to play against the Eagles in Week 5. Not this week, but next week. Now, hope is the exact word Coach Sean McVay used per ESPN's Sarah Barshop, so this is something we must monitor. But even if Cooper Kupp comes back, I'm not getting scared off of Puka Nacua, who can easily play the Robert Woods role in this offense. If there's good news on Cooper Kupp, by the way, I would consider throwing out a trade offer for Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Kind of poetic.
Now he's a philosophizer.
Thanks for joining me for the Fantasy Points Morning Lineup. Remember to subscribe to that channel for more fantasy football content. Absolutely destroy the like button. And comment if you enjoyed this video. Now, I do this show on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but I will not be here this Saturday. I am flying to Philadelphia for a wedding. Fall weddings, am I right? You can catch me over at fantasypoints.com. Don't worry, I'll be back on Sunday. Use code GRIFFIC25 and join our subscriber Discord to interact with other subscribers, interact with our staff, and get some questions answered. Good luck this weekend, everybody. Sorry about Saturday.